of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah.
Okay. Next, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
By Kurt, second by O'Laughlin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We have no one that is signed in for public comment. Next, I need a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda that approves the following: the minutes of the January 8th, 2018 regular meeting, city financial statements from the month of December, budgeted transfers for the month of December, and fire department statements from the month of December.
So moved.
Motion by Hill,
Second.
second by Carl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Aye. Motion carried. Next on the agenda is approval, excuse
Can I
me.
get clarification that she's voting in favor?
Since you're delayed on here, Deb, you are voting in favor, you're not doing it from opposed? Your aye comes in after I've asked for those opposed. You are voting for in favor of it, or are you coming in as opposed to it?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and hold off. Thank you. Next, we have under petitions from the public, somebody from St. John's Catholic School for Catholic School Week proclamation. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself, give us your address, please?
Point of order, did we skip the claims?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to have you sit back down. I didn't. No, we didn't. I said something about it, then, okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
I need a motion to approve the claims for payment. How's that sound?
So moved.
Motion from O'Laughlin, seconded by,
I'll second.
Vaughn had his hand up, but he didn't
That's
speak.
Whatever.
So, all
That's what I
those,
was taught.
well, now you need to speak. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Now, we're going to the petition from the public, and you can come back up if you would, please. Sorry about that being so confusing. Just need to give us your name and address.
All right, Nolan Reed, 601 11th Avenue, Northeast, Independence, Iowa.
Thank you, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Davis and independent City Council members. My name is Nolan Reed, and I am a 7th grader at St. John's School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening about St. John's and the upcoming Catholic Schools Week, which will be celebrated the week of Sunday, January 28th. I have attended St. John's School during my whole school career, and I am very thankful to have been given this experience. Catholic schools have a strong tradition of academic excellence and moral training. Students are encouraged to use their God-given talents in activities that include STEM, vocal and instrumental music, sports, acting, and many other areas. We are fortunate to have up-to-date technology, which we use daily in the classroom to enhance instruction. Our students consistently score well on measures of academic progress. Students at St. John's pray daily and attend Mass once a week. Religion is one of our core classes, and service for our community in areas far beyond independence is a valuable part of this education. We are taught to think of others and behave in a Christian, loving manner. Older students are paired with younger students as buddies and mentors. We are given many opportunities to learn how to become adult members of our church and our community. I am happy my parents chose St. John's School for me. Thank you for bringing attention to Catholic Schools Week and our local Catholic school.
Thank you. If you're okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Is that all right? It says, whereas every child in Independence has the right of the highest quality schools possible, and whereas education is critically important to the health and economic vitality of Independence and plays a significant role in the family's choice of where to live, and whereas citizens across Independence agree that improving the quality of education, particularly for neediest children, and expanding access to highly effective schools should be an issue of importance to our city's leaders. And whereas as the citizens of Independence recognize the critical role that an effective and accountable system of education plays in preparing all students to be successful adults on a global economy. And whereas Independence is home to a multitude of high-quality public schools, private schools, and Catholic schools, and educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas Independence has many high-quality teaching professionals in public, non-public, and Catholic schools who are committed to educating children. And whereas through a continued teamwork between parents, teachers, and schools, our community can strive to provide greater educational diversity and instructional excellence for our children. And whereas the vital cause of education reform is one that transcends ideology and political party affiliations, and whereas Catholic Schools Week is a nationally celebrated event, and during this week, we join with millions of parents, educators, schools, and organizations around the country to raise awareness of the importance of Catholic schools for our city, state, county, that challenge and motivate all our students to succeed. Now, therefore, I, Bonita Davis, Mayor of Independence, do hereby recognize January 28th through February 3rd as Independence Catholic School Week and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. Thank you very much for presenting this to us tonight. You can stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. Thank you.
Good job, Nolan.
Thank you, Noel.
Okay, next under petitions from the public is Dan Levi.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Dan Levi with Levi Architecture. For a short time now, we have been working with Al and the city on one of your 2017 capital campaign goals, which is to evaluate the accessibility of the building, and in particular this room as it meets our citizens' needs, in particular with the front steps. We have, Mike, if you want to pass those out. Some of you are a little more familiar with this than others. We've been going around on this a little bit, but as some of you are new, we're handing out revised renderings of what the new steps would look like. And then the next couple pages are a little more detailed drawings working towards eventually bid documents that the city could then entertain bids from contractors to renovate the front of the building in order to meet code compliant stairs and an ADA compliant ramp so that we may have access to the existing front doors that would be replaced at this time with new aluminum entrance framing and automatic operators at least the exterior doors. We hadn't quite got to the conversation about interior doors and how we might make that as well. But we had worked out originally, or previously, I should say, a cost opinion of approximately $76,000. But that did not include the ramp. We had a working session, and we had some feedback that they would like a ramp to be incorporated into the front door as well, so that it was fully compliant, rather than trying to do a compliant entrance over the rear where most of us came in tonight. So that has been incorporated into that as well. Give you all a moment to review that. Again, we're not asking for any action to be taken today, just an informational meeting. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate.
What was you said it was 76,000 with the steps?
Steps only.
Only what is the ramp additional cost?
We believe the ramp will be an additional $30,000 to $35,000.
One question I might as well ask it since I ask it all the time anyway. See, Denny, you want to ask it ahead of me? When we talk about handicapped accessible to the building, we have a whole second floor here that we don't use for anything because it's basically inaccessible.
Correct.
What, do you have any idea what the additional cost would be to put an elevator in to use the whole second floor of our building?
Sure. I believe it'd be approximately $145,000, not assuming that that elevator did not impede into the existing stair in the northwest corner of the building. Several years ago, we had looked at some significant options when we were exploring the new City Hall and Police Station project that was going to go south of where we are today. South of the fire station yet on that empty lot. And we had looked at that front corner as an opportunity. That stair would have to be relocated, and there would be a cost associated with that. If we leave those stairs as they are and find a new location, a new convenient location for the public to be able to access that elevator that could take us to all levels of the building, we believe it would be $145,000 as an estimate.
Do you have any idea where another place might be that one could be located?
We would want to, the first place would be just to the south of the existing stair, so you would still come into the offices, turn immediately to your right or to the west, and walk to the elevator. And then how that would work is where it comes up. Then we had some ideas, again, several years ago, how we would then rearrange rooms, but that was based on the program that was discussed then. We would want to go through and work with you on new program and how we could arrange that.
Would that be just for the second floor of this building, or would it go to the basement?
We would, as long as we're doing it, we would have it go to the basement as well.
Okay, because we do have the genealogy and everything in the basement also.
Now, for those dollars, that gets us accessibility once we are in the building. We are not currently accessible to get to inside the building right now. So we would still need to find a way to get accessibility to this floor.
But the ramp would accomplish that.
Yes, sir. So, but they would be additive dollars. There'd be two projects. At one time, we toyed around with ideas about trying to get accessible parking along the west side of the building and taking out some space downstairs. Could we come in at a mid-level to some kind of a space, come into an elevator, and then go up and down? It's possible. There's a lot of logistics to be worked out, and it will take more floor area to accomplish that. But if that's the direction that City Council saw fit to pursue, we would get into a detailed analysis of how to make that happen.
Okay. Well, I'm glad, I didn't want to build a ramp and a set of steps and then a year or two or three or whatever, decide to do something else and citizens look at us tearing up the new steps out there.
Probably not going to go over well.
Would the stairway have to stay there? Or could that become the elevator shaft?
That's what my question is too, an atrium type setting, the stairs go away, you'd have the atrium type setting with no stairs to the front and yet an elevator, would that meet ADA?
We can make that project meet ADA. We're a little concerned about how far we're going to project out. We don't want to get into the sidewalk. We've got some nice sidewalk, it's nice and wide. We don't want to project too far into that. I think that is possible. Our concern as an architect is not only to understand the logistics and meet code, but it's also the aesthetics of that. And so really, we would be concerned about what we would be doing to the facade of a historic structure that you have a giant atrium elevator shaft stuck on the face of this would be not, we wouldn't recommend it from an aesthetic standpoint. But if again, it's not my building, it's not my money. So if we're directed to go in such a direction, we would explore that to detail.
What about the internal stairwell, the steps inside the front door? So it's not an external shaft, it's actually inside the building? Is that?
That's what they're referring to, is the steps that are inside and taking
I'm sorry, I
those
thought you meant
out.
outside the building where
I did mean
where
outside.
the
I meant
new
outside.
stairs are
You meant
shown.
outside? Oh.
We had
Tear off
also,
the front of the steps outside and just build an atrium and have it accessible ground floor, basement floor.
sure,
second
so you
floor.
just walk in.
I was talking the inside.
You were
Oh,
talking,
you're
so
talking
the inside, we had explored that a little bit as well. They're solid poured concrete stairs, so there's gonna be some significant cost with demolition. But if we can get people to that area, then you could walk in and then have an elevator shaft that you could ride then for vertical circulation. We would still need a stairwell somewhere towards the front from an egress standpoint. In case of fire, you're not supposed to use an elevator, you want to use stairs, so we would still need to replace those stairs somewhere else towards the front of the building for proper egress.
Okay. There are 2 stairways back here in the middle of the building,
Yep,
basically.
when we did our analysis several years ago, we did an analysis, and they were a little too far away in an unsprinkled building.
I didn't know what the regulations.
Absolutely, no, it's a valid question.
So when you say the 145, now I'm kind of confused. Are we inside the front door, or are we outside the building?
Inside, it's a completely interior project. The 145 for the elevator and shaft would be completely interior of the building and not where the existing stairwell is now. So the existing interior stairwell would remain as is, and that elevator would be inside the building, not demolishing, the stairwell.
So you're putting it kind of probably where the vault is now in Al's office?
In the northeast corner,
Northwest corner.
That's where the stairs are.
northeast corner,
It could go in the,
Northwest is where you're
is
talking.
where the stair is. We would be south of the existing stair.
Oh, you're going to be actually,
Yes.
would be in the current
Yes,
office.
you'd
area.
come in through the interior of the vestibule
got you
doors,
now.
turn to your right, and have space.
Okay. I
But
understand.
That takes out a significant amount of area, and we already have space concerns in the office area as it is.
Okay.
But we had talked about, if we do that, then this room could then be taken over as additional office space and file storage space, and then the council chambers could be moved upstairs.
I got you
So
now.
that's how we would utilize the square footage.
Makes sense.
We're kind of a slow group. Takes-
No, these are all valid questions.
How much did you say that ramp was?
We believe the ramp will be 30 to 35 additional,
And the steps?
76,000.
76?
Yes, sir. These are numbers that we have vetted out with our own experience, but we don't like to rely on our own expertise. We get paid to draw things, not to build things and price them. So we have entertained all of this with a large local general contractor who was very gracious in their time and did some cost opinion work for us to validate these numbers.
Okay.
Again, they are estimates, however. In the bidding environment, it depends on the time of the year and who's busy and who's not.
Sure.
do these numbers include the interior doors? I mean, we talked about the exterior door, and then there's an interior door, and you made a comment about that.
Yeah, the exterior door and interior door set together, replacing them with an aluminum entrance framing, typical commercial construction with operators, probably going to be about $12,000.
And that would be in addition to these numbers?
Yes, sir. Yep. That was not a part of the original 76,000. We were not entertaining that at the time. The project has expanded probably, I would say, with good reason. Our concern is how do we logistically do that? They're beautiful doors, and I'd hate to just take them out, but we do want to be code compliant and accessible to to as much as our population as possible. So that may be a sacrifice we have to make in order to meet those needs.
And those doors we aren't able to put the openers on that type of a door?
The interior doors, we have serious concerns. It's an extremely heavy door. Operators will only they really will only push so hard on certain doors. And the exterior doors, I don't believe those are going to be able to be retrofitted. And I'm concerned with where we'd put it. An actuator is, it's a box, this tall, it's pretty gaudy. And,
Right.
and given the head condition that we have there, we were just reviewing it again before the meeting. It's not going to be it's not a simple fix. It's certainly possible. We would want to entertain that and actually get a hardware consultant to come over at our cost to review that possibility. Any other questions?
What would the elevator idea of mine cost with the atrium and? Leaving the existing steps out here would alleviate the need for external steps, wouldn't it?
Yes, we'd remove the existing steps altogether, and then within that atrium, you'd build a new set of steps maybe on one side and an elevator shaft on the other side. They would come up, and then you'd have some type of landing that would project into that atrium, a balcony almost, if you will. That's a great question.
Significantly more than what we've looked at?
With all of the things we've talked about, adding them together, I don't know if it would be maybe twice the total again. So, really off the cuff, that's,
Sure.
I was not prepared for that question, so I apologize. I'm not well prepared to answer that question, but I would guess it'd be at least twice.
Well, for that price, plus the aesthetics, that's probably flushed.
That's, that would be certainly your choice.
Is the engineering cost incorporated in this price?
No, we already have a separate contract with the city that has already been executed, and all design fees and engineering costs are included in that contract. And that would be regardless of design intent, except maybe if we go full atrium, we might want to revisit that contract. But the exterior work and the door work would already be included in that contract.
I think with the historical significance of the building, this is a far better plan than the exterior atrium would be. I think it would really detract from the building.
No, I think the pictures you have of the new steps fit in nicely with the brick and the architecture and.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have already had a masonry supplier already look through multiple samples. We have a board, and there's an image that we have of, we did a little Photoshop work, and we took that image, took a photo of the actual brick that was suggested as they came out and tried to match the brick. And they actually found a match that was a blend that was actually very good. We were quite happy with it. And then we used a computer application to take that photo and superimpose it over the building. And it actually matches, we think, very well. We have the sample board. We've then physically set it up next to the building, and we think the brick would be a very good match, better than we normally see. So we think we can actually make the project look just like that picture.
Well, no, I would really like us to be able to keep this building. I think, it's a nice building, it's a nice historical building, and I think the next thing we need to push is how to utilize the interior of it to maximize, and right now we're using a small fraction of it.
Agreed.
I think, not that we're taking an official vote on this tonight, but if there's any objections to proceeding with what you see here, I think there's some good points of, questions as to what we maybe can do. But really, we want to make sure Dan and his firm have the direction they need so we can get to, at this point, a bid document and move the project forward. And again, Dan was gracious. Last fall, he helped us work through the bid environment, which was not favorable prior to the first of the year. It was not the right time to do that. We've passed that hurdle, and now we want to move this forward. So
I would make a motion that we approve to proceed with the plans.
it's a discussion item. I appreciate that.
Okay.
We're not going to take a motion. I want to make sure everybody's on board
Okay.
with where we're going, and if there's tweaks to the design, that's really what we want to give them for direction. So beyond that, if we don't have any, hey, this isn't going to work, or I don't like it at all, I think they have the direction they need for where we're at tonight.
But I don't think, in looking at the picture, I don't think we have a historical door on the outside of the building, so I'm not too worried about replacing that one. So we're talking basically with this design and the doors, 130,000 probably?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, plus or minus, yep.
So I think these look fine, at least to me.
If you're looking for consensus, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if you've got any objections or things you
I'd
don't.
be all for the steps and the ramp anyway.
I got a question as the newbie. We're not gonna get somewhere into this whole, the steps and the ramp is gonna only trigger about 10 more projects. You know, you're gonna have to put an elevator in, you're gonna have to redo office space, you're gonna have to redo upstairs, you're gonna have to have restrooms up there if you have your council chamber up there. Pretty soon, we're looking at a big pile of money going into a 1950s building. Is everybody sure we're on board with this? And that don't get somewhere in the middle of this process and say, gee, we could have built a new one for cheaper than this.
It's a good point, Mike.
I'm the new guy.
No, Mike, we've been there before.
Yeah, a couple, 3 times, Carl.
Exactly, good point.
Well, and what we're talking about now is we have to have the steps because somebody's gonna get killed out here now. I mean, we basically,
But they're no different than they've been for the last 50 years, Bob. Nobody's any more likely to get killed tomorrow than they were 50 years ago.
They are a hazard to walk up and down. We've had people.
Yeah,
injured over
always
them.
have been.
Yeah. But that means they do
and-
need to be replaced.
I am totally in favor of this project, but I'm just saying, we're gonna end up with a bunch of money in this before we're all said and done.
The one thing that we do have, the ground that we've already covered on this topic, it is a public building, and the likelihood of avoiding the steps, the step replacement program is nil. I mean, we have to put the steps in because of the condition, and we'll go back to, our insurance carrier has informed us that they have a concern. Our loss control specialists have said, you really need to take a look at this, and here we are. If this is not going to maintain, to your point, a city hall, if you were to entertain something else, the ramp is optional, some of these other things are, but I don't want that $76,000 step estimate to go too far down the road, because unless you did something drastic and eliminated the whole front of the building, the steps have to happen. So,
I
just
agree.
so everybody's on the same page on that, not pushing the council one way or the other.
And for ADA compliance, the ramp has to happen too.
Right, and I was just going down what I thought I heard him say, but, if we're going to use this building, you have to have the ramp, you have to have the steps, the doors have to be changed. If we're going to use the building, we have to have access to the second floor. Now, we have the stairwells, I understand that, but that's not compliant. So, to your point, there's a fair amount of money tied up in it.
So we could potentially be looking at 275,000, 130 for the steps and ramp, and then 145 for the elevator.
In round numbers, I have you at 270, but yes.
And then the interior renovation.
Plus any remodeling you have to do here
Yeah.
and there.
well, but we found, how many times have we floated new city halls for, I mean, we're talking well over $1 million for that. I hate to say it, but I think it's gonna freeze over someplace before we build a city hall.
Yeah.
I mean, it just never floats, and we've done it, what, 2-3 times, and it's,
There's just a lot of things. The other night at the budget meeting, we had to turn the ceiling fan off because water was dripping out of it.
That was a
There's,
$500,000 drip, too.
yeah, there's some, if we're gonna do it, we gotta do the whole thing.
I don't disagree with you. But that's part of the problem. We stick our head in the sand and we don't do anything. We can't get a new building, so we don't do anything with the current building. And then we wring our hands and say the price keeps going up. What would have cost to do some of these things 10 years ago, 15 years ago? At some point, we gotta look at it and say, we're not gonna build a new city hall. It's just not gonna float in this community. And if we're going to do it, yeah, it's gonna cost us some money, and I agree, we need to understand it, but,
And that's all I'm saying is I want the 7 of us that are sitting here on this council to say, we're not looking at a new city hall in the next foreseeable future, and we're gonna proceed with this until it's completed, if that's what we're gonna do. We have a tendency to stop and start on stuff, and that's just not the way to deal with this.
well, I agree with you.
Fantastic drawings, I love them. It looks very nice.
Good job, Mike.
Poor Del Rios, though, they disappeared. They turned gray.
They're just a gray building.
Okay, I think that's really what we're looking for tonight, and
Absolutely.
we'll proceed as, I think, what we see here, and
So the agreement is we're fine with these prints, and now we need to decide whether we want to do the steps at some point to vote on it.
Well, the next step would be then to vote on authorizing Dan to go out for bid, if that's the question.
And we have a significant amount of work to do between now and then. We would continue to work with Al and the city to get through some of the details, some of the materials. There are some decisions, some design decisions to be made on particular materials and how we're going to light these steps appropriately, and how we're going to do some other particular details. So we'll come back again and have another presentation with more detail and answer more questions and seek out advice from you as to how you want to see this continue to go through. So we're certainly not done seeing you and asking questions from our end.
Are we getting anywhere near a bidding window to getting out good bids, or?
Yes. Before it, well, I would say before it thaws, but we don't have much snow anymore.
Yeah, well, we're not done thawing.
Unfortunately, no. So in the next, if we could be out to bid sometime in the next 6 weeks, it's still, we're getting a little tight, but if we could be out in the next 6 weeks, I think we would still be in a very advantageous position to receive some aggressive bids for spring or summer work.
And right now, I'm hearing that the elevator is interesting, but that's probably not on the table for this particular project.
I'm not looking at combining these two projects, but like Mike said, I think we need to realistically take a look at if we're going to start putting money in, let's take a look at the big picture and not put a Band-Aid on here and a Band-Aid there, and then 3 years from now try to build another city hall.
Can we put the elevator in the bids as an add-on or a separate? And then either accept or deny, depending upon what the bids come in at or where the money sits or whatever.
With your permission, I'll visit with Dan about how that fits into our current agreement as well as our current project, and
That's fine.
and give you a little more formal response. How's that?
What Mr. Hayward's referring to in our worlds, we call it an alternate. So we have a base bid package, and then the elevator would be an additional alternate. So we would have a number from the contractor that might be $130,000, and the alternate would be an additional $145,000 or something of that nature. Is how that would work, and you could either accept it or deny it. So, but then at least you would know what that is. We can continue to work with our local GC to work on a cost opinion. We've actually done a couple of interior elevators recently, so we think we're pretty confident on that number, but it's always good to get some backup from professionals.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you for
Appreciate it.
presenting. Thank you.
Back to Gina.
Next, I have Spear Financial, Maggie Berger, to come up, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maggie Berger with Spear Financial. I'm on your agenda a couple of times here, so you can tell me how you would like me to proceed. The first item in front of you, and I did pass out packets, is talking about the $2,010,000 sewer revenue refunding bonds, Series 2018. So that first letter that is on top on our letterhead, the city did proceed, you have held public hearings on this, and the city did proceed to go out to your local financial institutions and solicit bids from them to refund these bonds out. These are the 2005A bonds. They were your existing sewer revenue bonds that were outstanding. The interest rate on them was about a 5%. After soliciting the bids, you will note that we are recommending that you issue the debt to Farmers State Bank. It does say Waterloo, Iowa, because their bidding does come out of Waterloo, knowing that they are local, for the purchase of the $2,010,000 of sewer revenue refunding bonds at a true interest rate of 3.4853%. This is a net present value savings of about $116,953, and that is a 5.268% to the refunded principal. So with Yes, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, sorry. So with that being said, if you would like to flip to the second page of this packet, we've shown you what the outstanding debt is that originally was taken out in 2005. What remains, those interest rate coupons, range from a 4.6 down to a 5%. Again, the true interest rate of what's left is about 4.96%. What we would be doing is on the next page, we would be swapping out those interest rates and replacing them with about 2.45% interest rates down to a 3.7% interest rate. The very next page then shows you where that savings is. We show a nominal savings of $422,970. What we must calculate into this nominal savings is that on deposit right now, the city has $256,000 of debt service reserve fund. In 2005, on a revenue bond, you were required to set aside approximately one payment or 10% of the bond. And that's because revenues are, there's some risk in a revenue bond. Will the revenues come in? Will people pay their utility bills so that you can repay the debt? That debt service reserve fund is there as a cushion in case. Now, when we do the refinance, per the code, we have to use those dollars and buy down the issue size. So if we didn't have these dollars, our issue size would be about 256,000 more than the 2 million number that we're talking about right now. The new debt that the bank is willing to refinance for you does not require a debt service reserve fund. Because there's just a small amount of number of years left on this issuance, we are able to negotiate, usually with local banks in this manner, that you can use that money to buy it down, but you do not need to set anything else aside. And so we're not recommending anything else. So the net present value benefit after you use those dollars is that $116,000. We do give you the sources and uses on the very last page of this so that you can see where we're contributing and buying down the original size of the issue. With action taken tonight, we would close this deal on February 15th, and you would redeem the existing bonds on March 1st. So you're taking action this evening not only to award to Farmers State Bank, but you're also taking action to send the redemption notice to the outstanding bondholders. They will be notified 30 days before that redemption date of March 1st so that they can invest in other things, line their money up, knowing that they're going to be paid off from you so that you can enter into this secondary bank loan for the remaining life of that. We did receive one other proposal. It was a combination proposal from Bank Iowa and Security State Bank. They had teamed up, I would assume, because of the amount size of $2 million, that is a lot of money for a bank to take on. Their interest rate, though, overall was a 3.75% all the way down. That calculated more interest, and by state law, you are required to either take the low bid or reject both of the proposals. And so it is with our recommendation that you would find to accept the bid from Farmers State Bank at the 3.4853%. Are there any questions about that first refunding?
I think probably for people watching this, what we're basically doing is refinancing our house at a lower interest rate.
You are refinancing at a lower interest rate, and you are not extending out the maturity of the existing debt. That's very important, and I should have said that earlier. You are keeping the same maturity that you were set to keep. You are on track. The sewer utility, and we'll look at it in another view here, is in line and is functioning and not having any problems repaying the debt that's existing. You're just getting a lower interest rate so that you can save some money there.
We'll save $422,000 over the life of the,
That is correct. It's a nominal savings. So each and every year, your savings is going to be about $50,000 a year. Again, that takes into account you're using the 256 now instead of using the 256 on the last payment, which is typical of what you would do.
This does have I mean, as you look at the coupons, at the years, the last 2 years have the largest principal. We maintain a call option so that we can, if we choose to, not pay the higher interest rate on the larger principal at the end of this one as well.
Correct. And why your principal amounts are very large is they were in connection with other sewer revenue debt that you have outstanding. And they are the last two principal payments are following when that debt pays off. So what we were doing was really, as we would consider it, calling wrapping debt around each other, so that you were really making principal payments about the same, but in those last 2 years, you have paid off that existing debt, and so you had the ability to make larger payments, pushing a lot of that debt to that end.
You recommend backloading like this?
We recommend it when you have to raise sewer rates drastically to get to the point where you're at. So it is not something that everyone chooses to do, but sometimes people do choose to do it just because of where you were at. Again, this was done in 2005, and so I think, the sewer system, in my opinion, the sewer utility is functioning probably at the best level it's ever functioned in the last probably 20 years. And so finances were probably different in 2005, and this was a way to keep the immediate raise of sewer rates on the citizens at a limited amount, being able to backload the debt like this.
I think at that point, we didn't have much in our sewer utility fund to use. A little before my time, but when I came on, remember, Carl, we didn't have much to.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you consider usually when you talk about backloading is sometimes these types of improvements are done with the future growth in mind. And I think at that time, there was plans for expansion further that would have taken the sewer utility and put it in the place that we are today, in a much more highly functioning and operating in the black. And so sometimes you do a little backloading, knowing that 5-10 years down the road, things should be better based on the growth estimates that you've looked at and industries that are looking to come here and would be up and operational.
About that time, we had a major company close that
Right.
we were counting on revenues from.
Correct.
This one will require a motion and council action to authorize both the refunding and the issuance.
That is correct.
I'll make the motion.
Is this not the next item on the agenda under resolutions? Is that motion?
Yes.
Yes. It's the next item on the agenda. It'll be that.
Okay.
I will sit down till I'm called upon next.
Okay. So, motion to approve the calling of the outstanding bonds, approving and authorizing a loan agreement, and providing for the issuance and securing of payment of the $2,010,000 sewer revenue funding bonds, Series 218.
Now I'll make the motion.
Now you make, thank you.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Kurtz, and I need a roll call, please.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah. Vaughn,
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried. Now if we're doing the pre-levy next, so do you need to come back up and explain that one now?
So the next page in your packet is, I think, something that you may have already looked at. We are looking at issuing $2,600,000 of general obligation bonds, Series 2018. These are just preliminary thoughts. These are based on conversations that we've had, I think conversations that you've had, and these were before, and correct me, Al, if I'm wrong, streets and fire truck. Is that correct? Yes, streets, your streets project for 2018 and a fire truck is where we come up with the 2.6. What we've been looking at is this schedule in front of you over a 12-year maturity. We estimate, and again, these are general obligation, what you just acted on were sewer revenues, more risk in a sewer revenue. General obligation, what we're looking at is the interest rates probably would range somewhere competitively from about a 1.5 down to the 4.05, again, over that 12-year period. We have worked in the first 2 years to make the debt repayment where the city really can afford to have that debt repayment in your property tax levy. And so the item on your agenda is discussing the fact that we are in looking at, and not just putting level debt out in front of you, but helping you work into where you need or want that debt service levy to be moving forward into fiscal year 19. The reason that we're having this conversation is to be able to add a bond like this to your budget without having issued the bond by the time March 15th rolls around. We do need to hold a public hearing on the borrowing and set a pre-levy amount. The county auditor will not accept your budget with you just adding on, hey, we're going to do bonds in 2018, and they're going to be in this amount. They will not take that unless you've done a resolution by the council. So our suggestion is that you would set a date of public hearing on February 12th at your next council meeting. Hold the public hearing either February 26th or March 12th, depending on your notification publication dates. And then at that March 12th meeting or that February 26th meeting, that you would enter into the pre-levy resolution. What we're suggesting is around $105,295. We can pick that amount and say that's the amount that we want it to be in year one, and that's what you would add in. That still gives the council the authorization to change the size of the bond issue in a downward fashion after that time, after that action is taken, because we would just make sure that the first payment in the bond when we do go out and issue is in accordance with that $105,295 that you've requested. So if you decided you were going to downsize this to $1 million, we can do that. We would just adjust that first payment and adjust the rest of the schedule to make it coincide with what you've pre-levied. So you're not, I don't want to say that we're tying your hands in any way, and you're not committing to anything necessarily through just holding the public hearing. You're just getting yourself the authorization to move forward. We can then issue those bonds anytime in 2018 after you've gotten through the public hearing. These also would be essential corporate purposes, meaning it will be at the discretion. You will have the public hearing, but it will be at the discretion of the council to make the decision to move forward.
For clarification, this is closer to a 2-year bond issue. This is what we've talked about, having our projects that have state and federal funds tied to them. A big portion of these are 2019 construction, but we're starting the process here in 18. It does include 1 year's worth of the crack and seat maintenance. It does only have 1 year calculated in this figure at this point, and it does have an earmark for the fire truck. Also included in there, I should point out, we did get word through the grapevine, I don't have the document yet, but our state bridge fund application apparently has been funded. We're just waiting for the official notice. So right now, all of the state and federal earmarks are in place, waiting for us on this. Why is it 2.6 million? To Maggie's point, we have rounded it up a little bit for the sake of the public hearing. We can bring it back down as we get those numbers firmed up. But again, these are projects that we have engineer estimates on. We don't have bids on them, which makes it a little bit less secure for us when we say, here's your bond amount. But they're all projects that are in front of us, again, as we've discussed.
Does this include the Second Street
This
project?
includes Second Street Northeast. We have the Highway 150 Trail, which is the Enterprise Drive Trail. First Street East, Lone Creek Bridge, the Crack and Seat, an overlay project, the First Street West Trail, Enterprise Drive East, and then again, the fire engine.
And just so everyone
I'm sorry.
knows,
We also have the Southwest Water System, our local match is part of that as well.
Is that for the valve replacement?
The valve replacement, the CDBG grant application, correct.
Just in case you're new to the council, as you have indicated, when you get these public hearing documents from bond counsel out of the Dorsey and Whitney firm, they're very, very vague. We don't, we use very generic terms. Everyone does across the state. All you have to define is that it's for streets, sidewalks, traffic controls, anything like that, curb, gutter, water, sewer. We don't define it by road or street. That gets a little bit, there's nothing necessary in the code to do that. And we don't do that so that if you have a project, maybe say earmarked for 150,000, but the bids come in and the project ends up only being 108,000, you can use those extra dollars that were not spent and move them to another street or road project with the same defining features. And so, again, don't be alarmed that it does not specifically list all of the streets. What this is really just doing is giving you the ability and the authority to use that money for the projects that would fall in the realm of streets and everything that goes along with them.
I think what Al was trying to point out is this, we're not talking about one project, we're talking about basically 7 or 8 projects and trying to get a better price on our bonds by doing it all at once, that each project at one at a time.
Correct.
Correct.
Which ones will be FY19?
The ones that are targeted for 19 are First Street West Trail, First Street East, Malone Creek Bridge, and the Community Development Block Grant itself. That one's going to be tricky because that's really an 18-19 fiscal year crossover as far as when it happens.
Yeah, when they talked about it, that was what,
Yeah, part of what we're trying to do is balance out our fiscal 18 and fiscal 19, and then our construction 18 and our construction 19, which will be, obviously overlapping and different. The crack and seat can happen on either year. The Second Street Northeast is really designed for 18. That one we need to proceed with. I also skipped over the 17th Street Southeast intersection. There's some work to be done there. That's, again, it's really all of those projects that we've been working with state and federal aid on. So it's a lot of smaller projects, not that it's a small amount, but putting them all into one basket. We're not ready to issue the bonds. We're not asking to go out to sell the bonds now. We want to make sure we firm up our numbers as best we can moving forward. But we do have to have the public hearing for the pre-levy so we can start the process. That does tie our hands. We'll have to issue them sometime in 18.
You have to issue them sometime by the end of 18. That's not a problem.
Calendar or fiscal?
Calendar year 18, yep. So that works a little differently. And the reason it would be calendar year 18 is by setting the pre-levy and having the hearing, you would start collecting the property tax dollars in the fall for fiscal year 19. So it's important then bond counsel says that these would be issued by the end of calendar year 18.
So tonight, we're only going to do an approval to proceed with the pre-levy because we have to wait till.
Correct. Bond counsel has to provide those documents. You need to act by resolution to set a date of public hearing.
Okay.
And this will tie into B under the hearings, the infrastructure bond. It's the same topic. It's, are we willing to sell the bonds? The pre-levy gives us permission to put it into our budget, into our fiscal 19 budget that we're working on. The infrastructure bond is saying, yes, we want to proceed with the process to issue the bonds. We can have the public hearing. We won't issue the bonds, like I said, until later, but we can start that process now. So those two are really hand in hand.
Do we have some debt levy debt that will be done in these next couple of years too?
Yes, we have some debt that is coming off. In particular, infrastructure, we've got a fairly large infrastructure bond, the 3-year bond that is coming off of there.
So this isn't all going to be piled right on top of what we're doing now?
No, actually, we have taken what you have in front of you and we've started building it into our existing budget calculations, and we're still within that range that we had talked about, we're able to do that, meet that demand under this structure.
Al, I've got a question on the 17th Street. Is that on 17th actually putting the turn lanes in?
Correct.
Now, there's nothing on 150, right?
Correct.
The state would have to do that.
Correct.
That's up to them.
Correct.
But
No,
it
this
would
is-
help us with 17th.
Right, this is just the turn lanes and the enhancements on 17th property.
Okay,
Without a light.
right.
Our bonding rate still pretty good?
Bonding rates are still very good. We have seen interest rates rise over the last 12 months. They are not exactly where we thought they would be. We thought they may still even be a little higher than they are now. We did see interest rates uptick, probably the highest amount after the passage of tax reform, for whatever reason that may be. I think that, there were some spending restrictions, advanced refundings were restricted, this and that. So the muni market, I think, got a little anxious and thought there may be a little less in the market to play with, and so they wanted a higher demand in that. We have seen those come down, and I will be very honest, we're selling the second phase of GO bonds for Hawkeye Community College tomorrow morning. That is an 8-year bond issue. It's about $9.5 million. We will have a really good indication tomorrow that that's really our first general obligation bond out of the market as after tax reform. We've had some negotiated sales and felt that those were priced where they needed to be, but we're anxious to see tomorrow morning, but we're getting good indications of where rates are. We're watching our rates also across the state and comparing them. They are still low. I will tell you that this bond market rate does not move as fast and as quickly and as vigorously as the stock market. So you're not going to see the highs and the lows and the dips. Your bond market, as it steadily goes up, as the economy steadily improves or has the appearance of improving, those bond rates will steadily move up. They also are not correlated directly to the Federal Reserve moving on interest rates, but indirectly they tend to move in the same direction on the short-term side. If the Federal Reserve, though, did move last year, 0.25%, 25 basis points, we really didn't see our bond rates move much more than 10 to 12 basis points or 0.1, 0.12. And so we're not seeing it jump all that fast, but these are still investments. People are still using them as a safe investment, so it is still a place to put your dollars in a safe environment and not have to demand a 5% and a 6% interest rate because it is safe. You're going to get your money back.
I think the other question is, even with this, we're still not using up a great deal of our potential debt.
No, your debt capacity is still sitting just fine. We've looked at that, we've compared that, we've looked at what future projects that you have coming that have some federal and state money to make sure that we're not getting you out of the market. We are not. You're actually, your valuation, your 100% valuation has grown nicely over the last 4 to 5 years, and that has put you in a position to be able to do these projects and not really butt up against that debt capacity. So.
What I would ask is, first of all, authorization to proceed with the pre-levy, that it will give us permission to go to bond council and actually generate the documents for holding the public hearing, proceeding. I'd ask for the same consideration on the infrastructure bond itself, if you're ready to do that, and again, start the process. At this point, we've done a lot of conversation, but we haven't taken any formal action.
One thing that my constituents will ask is, will their property taxes go up as a result of this?
There is the debt service levy will affect the property taxes. We had talked at the budget meeting about where we want to be with that levy. We're well within that, including this. And again, we've started working with Maggie on what this could and should look like, and where are we going to be at to make sure we can fit within that levy. It is a debt service levy because it's a general obligation bond.
Right.
And we're doing what we can to mitigate those impacts. The answer is yes, it all affects our levy. But not to the point that we had originally talked about something in the 75 or 80 cent range. We're not at that point.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve proceeding.
With the pre-levy?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
yes,
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried. Then the next one is for a motion to approve to proceed with the infrastructure bond levy process.
I'd so move.
Motion by Hayward.
I'll second it.
Second by O'Laughlin. Roll call.
sorry, his last name's long. Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
yes,
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried.
The last item here, I'll
Like I say,
introduce
you're still here.
Maggie Berger. This is something we talked about very briefly, and I'd asked Maggie to go into a little more depth in the discussion about the SRF loan. This is really focused on the wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Yes, so thank you again.
She's kind of an expensive speaker, Al. I don't want her
When
here
Al
very
says we'd
often.
like to have you over and you're on the agenda a lot, he wasn't joking. So I've given you a little bit of background, and I'm not going to walk exactly through this front page, but I'm going to give you some details. The State Revolving Fund, or what we commonly refer to as the SRF, is a program that the city has not used in the past or in the recent past. The State Revolving Fund is a federally and state subsidized loan program. It is a revolving loan program. They lend money to clean water and drinking water projects. So clean water are sewer projects, drinking water being water improvements for things like water mains, water towers, et cetera. What we're looking at here is you have been engineering 2 projects with Fox Engineering that you were planning to go out and do, I believe, bid this summer, late summer, early fall. You were looking to use cash for these projects. We have talked with the administration, talked about future debt plans or future projects that we're aware of or that the city is aware of that may be coming down the pipeline. And so we have suggested that you not use your cash, not expense all of these dollars out of your current sewer fund. You do have these in cash balances, but we would recommend that you would use the SRF loan fund and take advantage of this program to preserve some of that cash. Our main reason for preserving that cash is not only safety and security, that you have the cash in case another project comes up that you don't have engineered. It's maybe a failure of a system, something like that. Secondary, as we just spoke about GO bond rates, those are reinvestment rates. And as reinvestment rates rise, that means your CDs rise, money market accounts that this money is in. We think by locking in the interest rate on this loan at the very low 2% that the SRF offers, you may be able to make more money on the cash that you have in that fund so that not only you're able to make those payments out of cash and revenue coming in, but also continue to build on the cash that you have existing so that 5-6 years from now, if you have larger projects in the sewer utility, that you've increased your cash balance or not depleted it so far. The program has a 1.75% interest rate. It's got a 25 basis point or a 0.25% annual administration fee, so it makes your rate 2% effectively. It has a 20-year maturity, but can be paid back in whole or any part after the loan's been outstanding for 10 years. So it does have that optional redemption feature, meaning that you can pay it back early if necessary. Part of the background on that is the engineers, they're required to file a report with the DNR to get on the intended use plan. We call it the IUP. The engineer, I've spoke with her, and actually she confirmed for me that she did this report for you a couple of years ago in some planning, and it just needed a couple of minor tweaks, and she thought that it would be easy to file on the March 1st deadline. IUP applications are done each and every quarter, March 1st being the next deadline, which would give you authorization to move forward with an SRF loan as soon as June 19th, which does fit into your schedule. You're not talking about going out and bidding these projects until after that date anyways, so it does work in your schedule to move forward with this. This program is also reimbursable, and that's extremely important to talk about. That just means that you would make the invoice payments. You would turn around and seek reimbursement for those invoices from the loan proceeds, and you would get those dollars back in your account within the week. If you send invoices out by Wednesday, you can have the cash back in your account on Friday through their process.
So this would not be a block cap loan from them?
It would be capped at the amount that you would hold your public hearing at and the amount that the projects are estimated at. But if you don't use all of that under that cap, you would finish off the projects at whatever level you were at. You wouldn't get all of the proceeds like a normal bond issuance.
Right.
You wouldn't get all the proceeds at one time and then have the ability to spend those. You would request, you would spend. And then with that being said, it should be noted that if you do have cash and you're getting to a point where you're like, that's the highest we really want to go on the loan, then at the end, you could start using some of your cash and use not all, we're talking about $2 million in projects here. So if in the last $300,000 or $400,000 you said, we're going to start using some cash and keep that loan there, you have the ability to do that at that point in time. So you would hold the public hearing based on projections, maybe the bid, even, you may have receipt of the bid by the time you hold the public hearing, and the loan amount would be set at this, and you can't really exceed it without having some additional public hearings, but you can go up to any amount under that and stop the loan at any time then, or stop drawing on the loan. So that's kind of nice because sometimes large projects like that, there are some change orders, either downward or upward. So it is nice to have that flexibility of not having to draw on the whole loan if it's not required. The other nice thing about the SRF program is because of federal regulation, which we've talked a lot about, federal regulation requires that you have to use a municipal advisor. Spear Financial is a municipal advisor. The program no longer allows you to enter into loan agreements without an MA. But because they require an MA, they also pay the MA's fee. So for this work, we will charge you nothing. We've already been analyzing your sewer revenue utility system, as we've done with the sewer revenue. We know our fee would be under their $4,000 cap. It would probably be somewhere more in the neighborhood of $3,000 for all the paperwork that we must file and do on your behalf. They will pay up to $4,000 of our fee. So that is a fee that will not cost you anything. You will have a couple of public hearing documents from bond counsel, but the fees are very, very minimal to use the SRF fund. And while they require the MA and you get the fee reimbursement, we would suggest that you do it. It's a good program. It is widely used amongst cities and counties. More and more cities and counties are using it. And there's really not a threat or a worry that they're going to run out of money. They've issued more and more debt through the years. And how their program works is when you repay the principal, that principal goes back into the revolving fund. They never use principal to pay their administration. That's why you pay the administrative fee. All principal and interest that is repaid goes back into the fund so that it can be lent back out on future projects.
There's a couple of other things on this. In talking with Winnie Gleason at Fox Engineering, there would be some minor engineering changes, if you will, to our current agreement with them, but it would be less than $5,000 total for the changes and the extra work they'd have to do. The one advantage that Maggie hasn't touched on, the interest rate that we pay, we capture or can recapture a portion of that back to our community for water quality projects. So if we pay the 1.75, I don't remember exact, but I think it's 1% of the interest rate that we pay in, we can capture or keep here for water quality projects. That's significant because I can use that to leverage projects through the watershed programs that the Wapsie Watershed District is working on. We can also use it for stormwater in some cases, depending on exactly what it is. And again, I'll remind you, we have a pretty sizable stormwater study taking place right now. So there may be some unintended benefits to that for us as well. But those are the costs associated with it. The timing is significant on this one. It is something that we can avoid if we chose to, but in spite of the extra paperwork and the extra process we have to go through, I think it has some merit and some value to the city.
I think as we consider the infrastructure issues we're having with our sewer system, preserving our cash is a really wise idea right now, because we've got a lot of things that are developing that are very unplanned for, and this is a great opportunity for us.
That's really what we were looking at. I should also note on the very last page, this is what the pro forma would look like that we would submit to the DNR and to the Iowa Finance Authority, the SRF program themselves. What I really just want to point out is we have taken in the refunding debt that you just acted on, because that is sewer revenue debt, and we've added in what the new debt would look like on this $2,230,000 if you were to borrow all of it. Those green lines, you notice that your payments are around $359,000 to $400,000 a year. The orange line is the coverage factor. That coverage factor must be 1.1 times, so it must be a 1.1 or higher. This means you do not have to raise any rates. So you can borrow this money, you have plenty of revenues coming in, and so I don't want to say you don't have to raise rates, you don't have to raise rates for this project. To be able to borrow this money now, if you look to raise rates for future projects or different things, that's at the discretion of the council. But to be able to accomplish this project, there's no reason for a rate increase. You would be able to pay these debts from the revenues that are coming in and not have to charge any additional.
And that's a significant test for us because of the bond that we just refunded. We do have a coverage ratio there to maintain, as she said, but also moving forward with our other projects.
And this would be repaid by 2023?
No, we just included one page. It would be a 20-year maturity.
Oh, okay.
So from the
Oh, that's
date
right,
that
the
you take it
SRF
out.
was a
Sorry,
20.
yes, it would be I just included one page. If I get into 2 pages, you're like, well, it just all looks the same. So, but it would go on for 2 pages. We would have the pro forma for 2 pages. And it would be a 20-year maturity that you could repay sooner than later. I will throw this out there. If you enter into a project 4 or 5 years from now, let's say a large sewer utility project, if the SRF interest rates are higher at that time, you now have this $2 million project that is locked in at the 2% rate. These are fixed rates. They cannot change those rates on you. And so if your large project comes in and let's say the rate is 3.25%, where it used to be at the SRF, if they take that rate back up there, that may be a better time to use your cash because then you're using cash to help buy down the project cost and you're not borrowing at that higher interest rate. So again, part of the thought process behind preserving your cash is that as interest rates rise, the SRF does have the ability to do that on new projects. Again, you're fixing this rate on this project, but on new projects going forward, 5 years from now, that interest rate could be higher. And so that cash could be more advantageous to you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I would ask for council direction or permission to proceed with the SRF process, which is somewhat lengthy,
You
but
just have to get going by March 1st.
Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion.
Motion by Carl,
I'll second
seconded
it.
by
I'll second
O'Laughlin.
Thank you all very much for your time this
Thank you,
evening.
Maggie.
Thank you,
Meg.
Thanks.
Roll call, please.
Sharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carried.
thank you, Maggie.
Thank you all. I promise I'm done.
Have a safe trip home. Now we're down to new business. Motion to approve the final plat of Jackson Green 6th edition.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Hill, second by O'Laughlin. Any other discussion? I need a roll call, please.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
We made you
Next.
sit here a long time, Steve.
Next is the motion to approve the Wapsie View Reserve Number 1 preliminary plat.
This is a project outside of city limits, but it just barely touches our two-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction, which means it requires your attention.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Hill, seconded by
I'll second it.
Carl.
Can we have some discussion on this?
Okay.
What all does this entail? I looked at the plans and I'm trying to, is this new project development buildings or?
It's a new project development. I don't have a lot more than what you have in front of you on that. The fact that it is in the county, you
Well, I
know,
understand this is all old, Greenlee's old property that Whelans have bought. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah, same here.
and it is across the river, the likelihood of it being in the annex territory for the city is almost zero.
No, it's,
I mean, it's just not something that is going to affect us. Again, the only reason it's here is because we do have a requirement for anything within that 2-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction to bless it before it happens. And if you take the very furthest tip of the city to the north and the very furthest south tip of this project, they touch.
So all we're doing is blessing it.
That's in essence what we're doing,
We're
yes.
we're not throwing any cash in the pot.
We have no involvement, we have no utilities there that I'm aware of or have been able to find out. It's only because of our responsibility within that 2-mile jurisdiction.
We're responsible people, we better vote for it then.
I would recommend that we approve it.
I'll make a motion.
Don't we already have?
I have a motion from Hill and a second from Scharf.
So we just need a roll call.
Hannah,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is carried. Next is a motion to approve the pre-application for, what? Dominic Spargrove? I have no idea what this is.
This is the Catalyst Grant Program through Iowa Economic Development for downtown renovation. Dominic wants to convert second-story space into potential housing. It is only a pre-application. The maximum award is $100,000. The entire program has $1 million statewide. It does require a city match of either cash or in-kind match up to whatever Dominic applies for. His budget is estimated at $460,000. We don't know how many applications they're going to get. This is a new program. I would guess that, you know, of the $1 million, there's a pretty fair share of that that's set aside for communities. I don't remember if it's less than 2,500 or small communities. So the pool that we're eligible for is shrunk down quite a bit from that yet, too. But we do need the council's blessing and permission to proceed. At this point, I would recommend that if we're going to proceed, our local match be in the form of in-kind services and tax abatement, TIF.
So we're gonna have to match this then?
We have to match, if it is awarded,
Yeah.
we have to match the state's award dollar for dollar to be eligible.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Our last meeting, we talked about snow removal and parking. If he's got 12 apartments, or the potential, does he have 12 parking spaces?
Under our current code, if he provides us with a list of license plates of his tenants, each unit is allowed one space, and that's in our existing code.
Right.
So if he identifies one vehicle per lease, we can provide one space.
Okay.
And during periods of snow emergency, they would have to vacate that lot,
Yes, they do.
and it would be up to them to find where they're going to park, correct?
Under our current code, yes, sir.
I think speaking for this program, I think it's a program that we go back to the commercial industrial rollback. One of the things that they talked about potentially happening was to create housing in communities by creating apartments in the second floor of downtown businesses. And I think they put this program together, it's a catalyst. They're trying to get somebody to do it so that everyone else sees that it's something it's a good deal, and they can, it's kind of like building a duplex. If you buy a business or build a duplex, you live on one side and help to pay for it with the rent from the other side. And I think, the downtown area, we've got a lot of merchants that are probably going to be looking at some point or other wanting to retire or move on. And for younger people that are going to want to take over those businesses, they're going to be looking for some kind of income to help them supplement the retail business. So I think it's a program that's good. I think it's a program that's trying to help convince people to use a wasted space right now.
Are they gonna pay any of this money back, Al?
Our match is not a loan, it is a grant. It is our investment. We're looking at each dollar of ours leveraging somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.5.
So in essence, what we're doing is we're giving them money to start a business, right?
We are matching the state's grant, not to start a business per se. In this case, it is housing
Yeah,
development.
but that's still part of their income, will be.
It is part of their income if they are successful in
It's rental
creating.
property, so it'll be an income for them.
Excuse me, Deb?
It's rental property, so it'll be an income for the landlord.
Yes, it is.
Given this money, you have to match dollar for dollar. This person gets all that given to them, and parking is going to be a major issue. If you move into an apartment, chances are there's going to be a couple move in, so you're going to have two vehicles, so you're going to double the vehicles. And you have problems right now in town getting the vehicles off the streets and out of the parking lots. Where are they going to park?
Actually, them apartments have been a problem ever since I can remember. Younger people go down there, and I'm not bad mouthing younger people. I wish I was one of them myself. Truth of the matter is, they don't take care of stuff like the older people do. And the older people are not gonna walk up them steps, and the younger people is gonna be a certain percentage of them trash them to begin with. And 5 years down the road, it could be just as dismal downtown as it is today. It's just like the sidewalks, the flower pots, the light poles, and everything else we've thrown money at in the downtown area, and I can't see where it's trod 25 cents worth in since we started all this. Why are we expected to put more money into it? It's like a rat hole. You just keep throwing money after it,
What's the alternative, though? Demolish?
I don't know what the alternative is, but sooner or later, we're gonna have to be responsible for the money we're throwing down there. And you just can't, you might as well take that money and put it in a shotgun and take it right out here and fire it off, because it's not gonna do any more good than doing that. I can't see where it is.
If we use our TIF program, they have to make the investment. These are tax dollars that we're not collecting today. So, as far as where does the money come from, that would be the most logical place to match it from. As far as putting money into the downtown, my concern is if we do nothing, we're pretty much creating a self-fulfilling prophecy here, saying our downtown is going to deteriorate because we're not willing to help somebody who wants to put $420,000 or $460,000
That's
into
scare
it.
tactics, Al. It's
Scare-
been like this for the last 100 years, and it's not getting any better, and you're not going to improve the quality of your renters. You're not going to do, there's no guarantee in that computer at all you're going to improve that. And I don't see really what putting 7 people downtown is going to do for the downtown area.
Well, I think it's creating 7 housing opportunities that we don't have today. And we know that we're short of housing opportunities.
That's true, it does cover that base, it does.
We'd pick up some property tax revenue, wouldn't we?
Yes, sir?
I'm assuming there would be an increase in his valuation.
Now, are they have an obligation, because I know how things can go with TIF, say the money goes there, they do this is lovely, I got a buyer, I'm selling it. We're gonna lock them in?
We have no restriction, there is no restriction in this program that I'm aware of at this point that would restrict them from selling the property. If they fix it up and they sell it, the responsibility is still there. Our investment is tied to them generating the tax dollars, if we're using TIF.
Well, whoever comes in the next time, what I'm saying is, this particular person make a profit off our efforts. Can that be stipulated?
I'll be honest with you, I don't see it in the Catalyst program. I'm not sure we can be more restrictive on the Catalyst program than what the state is.
Okay.
I think that they're going to,
Well, I'm not saying they're gonna do that, Al, but, I mean, if the opportunity come and somebody come along and say, you know, boo, boo, boom, and everybody becomes but a winner, I mean, we're still a winner for some of the tax rule, I understand that part of it.
but our investment is still tied to those taxes.
Tax.
We're only putting, under TIF, we don't pay that until the dollars come in,
Yeah,
per se.
correct.
The one time that we did pay it up front is, I mean, we paid it, they defaulted, and we do have the money back. And so that is, for those times that we paid up front, that there should be a stipulation, you pay it, if you don't perform, then we get our money
Right,
back.
the clause in there, yeah.
Right, but if we're doing it as they pay their taxes, we already have that built in by virtue of you don't pay the taxes, you don't get the incentive.
It's in, right, that's right.
So, from that standpoint, it doesn't make a big difference who owns it, as long as the taxes are paid.
I think one of the things, definitely this is, we have a shortage of housing, and I think when we've done some of the surveys, maybe when George comes up next, there are young professionals who are looking for housing that work downtown that are a higher class than what Denny is referring to, that are looking for this type of housing to begin with, because they work downtown, maybe at one of the banks or something to that degree, and they want housing. They're young single people or maybe young couples, and these type of apartments, if we help and get those developed, would be an asset to them. They are ones that are looking for that, and maybe George will address to that. But when we've done surveys for what needed housing we need, this is exactly what several people were asking for. So,
I realize that's going to cover that base. It's not that at all. You know, it's going to cover that base. But if it was such a valuable asset, why don't the store owners, the people that own them right now, why haven't they went down and applied for loans to fix their own apartments up? That's what I have to do when I'm in business. I don't remember ever walking in that door over there and asking you people for money so I could get in the business. If I thought it was a surefire thing, I'd go to the bank.
Again, before we overthink it, I mean, we have to commit to the fact that if it is moving forward, that we're willing to support the project. But at this point, it is still a pre-application.
That's just opening the door, though.
That's what we're doing.
Just opening the door.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
I'd make the motion that we approve the pre-application.
a motion from Hill, second by O'Laughlin.
Dollars from those buildings.
I'm sorry? I didn't understand what you said,
We're
Deb.
already getting tax money from those buildings.
We do collect a tax for those buildings. The difference is if we put, in this case, they're proposing 7 apartments. The 7 apartments add value, taxable valuation to that building. There is an increase in value because currently they're not being used.
Al, I've got a question. On in-kind contribution, what would be examples of the in-kind contributions that we could offer?
The most logical would be things like your building permits or some of your services that we can provide from the cities.
Is there anything that we could garnish from the rental parking spaces?
I think that all of that is on the table, yes.
Okay, it's just something, I'm trying to think of ways that,
I'm pretty sure that each parking spot downtown is worth about $10,000 a year.
okay.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a thought.
and I don't have a complete answer on the in-kind. That's something that George and I talked about earlier today. We have to firm that piece up, because obviously if we can do it in-kind instead of cash, that would be the preference for us. We want to support it, but that would go a lot further for us.
Do you have any idea, Al, this time? Probably not, just, I know they're gonna levy, what, 1 million for the whole program, the state or whatever. Do you have any idea, maybe feelers out there, how many programs are, no indication?
We have, no, they just rolled this out the first of the year.
I see.
I would guess that it's going to be very popular, but we don't know.
Right.
And, there's, if you take a look at 920 or 930 communities in the state, most of them are going to be scaring that small side. So, we're probably competing with 150 communities.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right.
It's hard to tell. First year, people might sit back and watch, and there might not be a lot of people interested, or they might all jump on the bus. That'd be pretty hard to call.
It would be.
But $1 million isn't going to go very far.
Not at a $100,000 maximum project.
No.
If you get very many people hitting the top end of that, not many.
And this is just a pre-application, so you're going to be able to make decisions later on this.
Well, that is correct. Councilman Vaughn did acknowledge that, we're opening the door. If the pre-application invites a full application, it's still competitive. That doesn't mean it's done, but that's just the next step in the process. And I'm not sure the state has their whole process completely vetted, because they haven't done this before. And they're rolling out some guidelines, which are interesting, but we're all learning.
I do have a motion on the floor. We
And a
need a
second.
roll call for this. We did have a motion and a second, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I need a roll call.
Vaughn,
No,
Kurtz,
Yes.
Hayward,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Scharf,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Hannah,
No,
Motion carried. Okay. And finally, George has been here for a long time. We're up to you, George, for Camden County Economic Development.
Good evening, boys and girls. And George Lake with Buchanan County Economic Development. And before I get into it, I'd like to once again introduce my coworker, Lisa Kramer. She is our communications manager, which has been a godsend for me. It frees me up to work on things like the Catalyst program. Anyway, it's you've got a packet there in front of you, and I know you've got a lot going on. I'll try to keep my comments brief. Just briefly, once again, for folks here and folks at home, Buchanan County Economic Development, I represent and work with all 11 communities in Buchanan County. Earlier tonight, I was up in Fairbank. Last week, I was in Jessup and Brandon and over in Winthrop on some other projects as well. And so we work with all the communities in the county. And a number of things I want to talk about. I've got activity report from the past year, and I'm not going to go over it in any great detail, but I do want to touch on a couple of highlights. First and foremost is a housing study that we just completed, and I will come back to that. In the 3.5 years I've been working in Buchanan County, hands down, this was the most significant accomplishment of the Buchanan County economic development. What it did is, in terms of addressing workforce issues, issues with schools, issues with increasing our property taxes, is the issue of housing. And housing is expensive. When I was up at Fairbank earlier tonight, Ron Wood, who's on the council, he has a pretty substantial construction company, and he's talking about how much this past year lumber has increased in price by something like 20%. We could talk with Steve Ohl back here, and he could tell us about the price of concrete, how it's gone up so much. And so the prospect of building and constructing new housing or rehabilitating housing is expensive. And what this housing needs assessment has done, it's been a verified study of Buchanan County, of each and every community, and it's identifying the issues each community is facing in housing. And once again, I'll come back to that just very briefly. The next thing I want to talk about in generalities is the Rural Water Program. Buchanan County Economic Development back in 2000 helped establish a rural water system in Buchanan County. Now, since then, there's been several communities in Buchanan County that has hooked up to it. Initially, it was Quaskey, Raleigh, and Aurora, and they've got their nice water towers, which they're very happy to show off. Since then, Hazelton, Lamont has hooked up with it. Littleton is served by it, and earlier this past month, Fairbank has voted, and they're going to keep their own system, but they're going to purchase their water in entirety from the Rural Water Program. Now, what's nice about this is the rural water system is expanding even further. They're going to extend from Raleigh down to Brandon, come up past Jessup, and then connect up to Littleton Fairbank, and that's going to create a completely looped water system. And so, how is it beneficial for the City of Independence? You know, we all know economic development doesn't stop at the border. Good things don't stop at the city boundaries. And so when our surrounding communities do well, we will do well. And certainly the folks from Brandon and Raleigh, they send their kids to Independence. Now on your study, or on your activity report, I've got several main headlines highlighted in green. And I'm just going to touch on a few of these. First and foremost, our main priority is working with the existing businesses. The companies are here, they've been here multi-generational, and that's where our focus can and should be. And when you're looking at the businesses in Buchanan County, the companies that are expanding big time, Priest Enterprises, they're up to nearly 200 employees. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they were 120. Gator Manufacturing, they've probably have added at least 100 new employees in the course of the last year. They're doing another building expansion project this year. The creamery is expanding. Over in Jessup, Birch Cabinet, they're up to their employment levels where they were at 2008. And so we have a number of companies that are expanding within the county, and that's where our focus is. And we're holding 2 career fairs a year to assist them. We're holding a series of lunch and learns where, you know, an hour and a half session where businesses can come in and engage in a workshop on how to improve their business. We're having another lunch and learn coming up in February dealing with using Google tools for business, for marketing and other things. And getting back to workforce is crucial. The housing needs assessment will be very helpful for that. This last year, I met with over 60 Buchanan County businesses, sat down one-on-one with them, and the overriding issue is workforce. And many of the companies are saying that it'd be easier if they could keep workers, if they could find decent, affordable housing within their communities. And yes, there is existing rental properties within our community. You know, we're very fortunate here in Independence. I'll give Mr. Ohl a big attaboy. He's built some very nice places to live here in Independence. and we're going to expand upon that. And then, and in terms of new business, I mentioned new business. You know, in 25 years, there's been 3 new industrial expansions in Buchanan County. Birch Cabinet in Jessup, the ethanol plant in Fairbank, and then L&M Radiator here in Independence. And so are we out there beating the doors to try and attract, was it Yahoo or Amazon? Yeah, 50,000 employees. I don't think so. However, we are indeed reaching out, and if companies want to expand, we want to welcome them into Buchanan County. You know, a little town like Raleigh, if you could get a company that's employing 25 people in Raleigh, that would be huge. It would be huge if we landed a company in Independence hiring 25 more workers. That means more money coming into our communities, more kids in our school districts. And so, anyway, that I do want to get back to, and there's other stuff, you guys, well, I was going to badmouth someone. I think most of you all know how to read, so I'll let you go through that. I do want to touch on the housing needs assessment. It's rather extensive, and it's already paying dividends for Independence. As you know, the city is working with Echo Development out of Cedar Falls, and they're looking at possibly building 48 apartments in Independence. They called me up a week after I announced that the housing needs assessment was done. They've worked with the workforce housing tax credits in the past, and they saw the study, and as I've put on your page here, according to the housing needs assessment, there is a need for 133 to 143 new housing units in Independence by 2020. And so what the housing needs assessment did, it's done 2 things. First and foremost, it's made the city of Independence eligible for a variety of new assistance programs that will help the builder in terms of tax credits, zero interest loans in some cases, forgivable loans. But also it said that there's a market. You know, if you've got a business, you're not going to make widgets if you don't think you can sell any. And with the apartments, saying that there's a possibility of the need for 133 to 143 new housing units, the builders will be more comfortable in at least considering locating, whether it's in here or in Jessup or in Brandon or wherever. Anyway, I'd say the rest of the information, well, one thing that's kind of interesting, in Independence, 34% of the homes in Independence were constructed prior to World War II. And so a number of these homes are in very, very good repair. I mean, for a number of years, I lived in a home that was constructed in 1890. And except for the ghost that was wandering about the house, it was a very, very great house in which to live. And so either way, the housing needs assessment indicated that there is indeed a need for housing in Independence. It makes the city eligible, the builders in the city eligible for a variety of financing opportunities. And that will address workforce needs, possibility of more kids in our schools, more people shopping downtown. Anyway, questions, comments? All right, thank you, folks.
I have one question.
Yes,
What's,
sir.
define affordable housing?
Okay, with affordable housing, I'll go by the definition that the state of Iowa uses. And affordable housing is housing that will meet that someone that is earning 80% of the standard family income. For instance, a family of 4 that meets that 80% threshold, they're making about $57,000 a year. And that's, you know, and you're right, Mike, depending on who you talk to, affordable housing has a different definition for different people. For my son who's just out of college, he'd say affordable housing is living in mom and dad's basement. But, you know, in terms of affordable housing, I'll use the definition that the state of Iowa uses. Someone that is earning a wage equal to 80% of the standard wage within the county.
That's a pretty rich estimate.
Yep. And once again, an example of this is A family of four, it's about $57,000 a year. Good question, Mike. Anything else? Thank you, folks.
Thanks, George.
Thanks a lot, George. Okay, next on our agenda is going into a closed session. I need to read this
That mean I'll have to leave?
subject. Bold.
Yes. So actually, someone should make a motion, make that motion to go into closed session.
Okay. Deb, one of the things I need to ask you is to make sure you're in a location where there's nobody else that can hear anything that goes on from this point on.
That's right, I'm the only one in the room.
You're the only one there in the room or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session.
Okay. motion-
Second.
Motion by-
And just to back that up, in making the motion, could you please read the pursuant to Iowa Code section, and that blurb?